G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So today we're going to be discussing about breakout plays for the 2024 AFL season, going over each AFL club and selecting a player who I think can take the next big step this year, but also alongside a breakout player for each club to broaden the content a bit in this video. I'm also going to be discussing two other categories for this video, which are the following of picking a All-Australian smoky and also an under-the-radar kind of player, a player that might not be getting much hype at the moment or heading into this year, but I think can come in and play a really pivotal role for their team this season. And the criteria for selecting an All-Australian smoky is that a player must never have made the All-Australian side nor the All-Australian squad. So these are some proper smoky options we're going to be selecting today. I wanted to add in these extra categories because the past 2 years or so, I've only went over around 10 to 15 hand-picked players, which I feel isn't really enough when discussing breakout players. So with these extra categories, it allows me to discuss a bit more of players that I am really keen on heading into this year. So if you do go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. That'd be heavily appreciated. And let's get into it. So we start off, as always, with the Adelaide Crows, and for my choice of the Crows breakout player for 2024, got to be going with 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐝. Signed a massive deal for the Crows not so long ago. They really do rate this guy, and after a few seasons now, he's been able to show some great moments as sort of that outside midfielder type that can also play half forward. I think his mix of toughness and class really does show, and from what I've heard, he's put on some good size this preseason, so I reckon he does take the next step in 2024 and plays a lot more inside time in that Crows midfield mix. For an All-Australian smoky, you've got to be looking at 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐸 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿 really. He had a great debut season for the Crows last year. He was exciting, he had some great goals and some great moments, and just will continue the output and consistency, I think, this year. And then finally, for an under-the-radar type of player, I know Adelaide fans really rate this guy, but when you scale it towards the whole of the competition, I still don't think 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿 gets much of a mention of a player that can really have a great season. Just a really good midfielder forward, toughly built, can burst from stoppage, and also, from what we saw last year, could kick some really good goals on that left boot. So I think he really improves his numbers this season for Adelaide. Next team up, the Brisbane Lions, and for my choice of a breakout player, I've discussed this guy plenty of times on the channel. 𝐬𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, Coleman, love watching this guy play. I've been a fan of him for quite some time, and I mean, all you have to look at is just his final series from last year. It was brilliant. Silky defender, great ball playing defender too, clean on that left boot. And with Daniel Riches' retirement especially now, you'd think he just gets more onus and more freedom to control and patrol that half-back line for Brisbane. All-Australian smoky, Coleman does qualify. I want to put him in, but also I want to select another player. Zac Bailey. He is a 24-year-old, going to be 25 at the end of this season. Again, great grand final performance. And he's probably one that really needs to improve his output of numbers, because it's hard for those sort of half-forward, midfield blends sort of types of plays like him to actually get a spot in the All-Australian side. So if he can kick over, 35 goals and average 20 touches a game, or 20 plus a game, he's certainly a chance for a smoky option. And under the radar type, again, this is one that Brisbane fans really do rate. He had some great games in the back half of last year. 𝘚𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿. When as soon as he played his first game, you knew that this guy was going to be a solid player for Brisbane. He's had some great games, and he's just been able to show his really good overhead ability and also rebound ability too. I think he's an important component already of Brisbane Lions, of the Lions back six. So yeah, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿 is going to be a player that I'm going to have a keen eye on this year. For the Carlton Blues now, my choice of a breakout player, I'm going to be going with 𝐬𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴, the small forward from Western Australia. He had some nice cameos last year for Carlton. He was able to come on as the sub against Port Adelaide. Pretty sure kicked that 4 goals and pretty sure almost was a quarter. So he's had some nice moments for Carlton, and I think where the Carlton can always improve in heading into this year is more output from their smalls. And 𝐬𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐴 alongside Owies, he's a talented player. He can kick some great check side goals. I think he's capable of kicking over 30 goals this year should he really boss it. All-Australian smoky, yeah, a few options I can go with here, but I'm going to be going with Adam Cerra. He was very good in Carlton's down patch last last year, and overall a very solid player. Pretty sure he was top 5 in Carlton's best and fairest last year, a clean midfielder, and definitely one that is very, very important in that midfield mix. And a player under the radar. Don't really hear about this play too much when you think of other young players like the Hollands brothers. I'm going to be going with Brodie Kemp. I thought when he came in last year and partnered up with 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐷ering in that back half of the year for the Blues, he was solid. He really should have made the 22 under 22 side. But his intercept numbers were promising. I think he's just building really the high draft pick from not so long ago. So Brodie Kemp to really have a solid year for the Blues. Now for the Collingwood Football Club, looking to go back-to-back, of course, this season, no doubt. Now, when looking at their lists, there's sort of hard players to really identify, especially the Collingwood's list, because they have a lot of players that have already broken out and are very good, or they're also role players that you can't really say they'll break out. So really the only genuine option to select is 𝐼𝐚𝐿𝐷 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐷. You can probably already say he has broken out, but if we're talking about a breakout play to go to the elite level, definitely 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐷. We all know a terrific small defender with a great mix of rebound and power and strength and one-on-one ability and also intercept marking. Great footballer, all-Australian 𝐓𝐿𝐷. Going to be going with Bobby Hill. It's a bit of a recency bias one because of his Norm Smith medal performance, but honestly, last year, pretty much across the whole span of the year for Collingwood, he was really impressive, and I just knew that this guy was going to be a solid recruit. He's exciting, he's flashy, he's one that can really increase the output of goals. And a player under the radar, again with Collingwood's list, not really too many young players to shout about. Finlay Macrae is one that we've heard quite a bit from Collingwood fans, so I'm going to be going with Jacob Ryan. He did also win Collingwood's best first year player award last year, so I think he can come in this year and play a few more games, and yeah, his rebound ability is also quite strong too. So yeah, Jacob Ryan for an under the radar type. Next team up we have is Essendon. Now, when looking at the list, there's really so many players to choose from because they are a side filled with young talent, but players that are yet to really scratch the surface and show that they are top footballers. So a lot of options to go with here. For my breakout player, going to be going with Nick Martin as the first option. I've got two here. You can already argue, yes, he did have a breakout year last year, but I'm talking about a breakout year when he could potentially become an All-Australian, because last season, or ever since his debut, he's been able to show that he can be a quality footballer. His blended work ethic and also goal-kicking ability on that wing last year for Essendon was really impressive, so keen to see how he will go this year. And for my next breakout player, I'm going to be going with Ben Hobbs. His body is just ready-made to take the next step in 2024 in my eyes. He really improved his centre bounce attendances numbers last year. I heard that a few days ago, actually, he has a minor AC joint injury, but I don't think they'll derail his season completely. Still think he'll be just another addition to that Essendon midfield mix that will have some nice games in 2024. For my All-Australian 𝐓𝐿𝐷, gonna be going with Nick Martin again. It's hard to go past a player like him, really. A player that will take the next step in my eyes and just fits that perfect title as an All-Australian 𝐓𝐿𝐷. And a player under the radar. I know that they did recruit Jade Gresham, but a small forward that I liked watching last year was Jai Menzie. Essendon supporters really got around this guy, pushing for more consistent games. I think he played around 20 games or so this year and kicked around 23 goals. So, you know, if he can kick over 30 goals this year as that young small forward, he's going to be a player to watch, I think, in 2024. Sort of lacks the poise and composure a bit for the play he is, but that will improve, I think, heading into this year for Jai Menzie. For the Fremantle Dockers now, another side that is just blessed with plenty of young talent all across the board. For my breakout player, I'm going to be choosing Matt Johnson, the young midfielder. He had some nice performances last year when he came into the side. I think he played around 18 games or so. And when watching him, he certainly looks like he's good enough to now become a mainstay midfielder, part of that midfield mix for the Dockers. He's got a really good engine, got good foot skills. I like his inside craft too. He's going to be a solid player, and I think he really improves his game this year. All-Australian 𝐓𝐿𝐷, going to be going with 𝐼𝐴. This guy's very capable of kicking over 50 goals this year, especially of the forward line situation at Fremantle at the moment. He's just a really under-the-radar type as well, let's be honest. So I'm really big on 𝐼𝐴 to own Fremantle's forward line this year. And an under-the-radar type, he recently joined the club. Jeremy Sharp, I heard he has been going quite well in the preseason for the Dockers. Probably isn't best 22 at the moment, but he is a very aerobically gifted player, one of the fittest players probably already at the Dockers. Really good work ethic, and I think he can push a case for a best 22 spot this year, and a player to really watch for Fremantle in 2024. For the Geelong Cats now, there are some nice selections to go over here because Geelong's youth in general, I think, probably lack a bit more exposure than other clubs. So who's going to take the big step this year for a breakout player for the Cats? I'm going to be going with Tanner Bruin. You look at Dangerfield, you look at probably not so much Atkins, but definitely Guthrie. Are they going to play full seasons? Maybe, let's be honest, probably not given their bodies. So it's probably one of those young midfielders to really improve this year. And I like the look of Tanner Bruin. In some nice patches and some nice quarters he was able to string together last year for Geelong. Cats fans also really rate this guy as well, and he's just a tough nose inside midfielder that's also able to break free and accumulate the footy. So like the look of him. All Australian Smokey, it's a big ask, but since Ollie Henry was able to boot home 41 goals last year, why can't he come out and continue to improve his numbers? It's hard though because I've just got so much talent in that forward half, but I tell you what, Collingwood fans weren't happy when this guy did leave. I just think this guy has superstar potential and he's almost like an under the radar type given how good he was last year. So for me, he's a perfect All-Australian Smokey kind of player to choose. And finally, for an under the radar player, I'm going to be going with Shaun Dux, the new recruit for the Cats. The mature ager had a terrific season for 𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐵 in the VFL last year, kicked lots of goals, or was kicking goals for fun really, and can definitely come in and play a part in the Cats forward 50. So for me, he could be a player that could be a real surprise packet in the competition. So Shaun Dux for the Cats. Next team up, the Gold Coast Suns. Are they going to finally make finals this year? It's going to be interesting. We all know, good young side with plenty of young talent. For my choice of their breakout player, got to be going with Sam Flanders, really. It's the obvious choice. He was finally able to get some consistent numbers at the back half of last year, move into the midfield more, and, you know, just his qualities that we're able to identify in his draft year are starting to come into fruition now. Good accumulation, tough as well, accountable player, fit player too, got a great engine. Think he is one to really improve this year. For an All-Australian Smokey, I've always rated this guy heavily. Going to be going with Charlie Ballard. He's never made an All-Australian squad before, so this could be the year where he could finally push for a case of selection. He's a terrific intercept marker, and I think when you do pair him with Sam Collins, they build a really formidable duo. For my choice of an under-the-radar player for the Suns this year, I'm going to be going with Malcolm Roses. If you watch my tier list video, I put this guy on the good tier. I think he can have a really good year because when you look at the appointment of Damien Hardwick, you just know he'll want more from those small forwards with the pressure and execution. So Roses had some great moments across the span of last year, kicking a few bags here and there. So if he can really show some consistency game in, game out with great pressure and great execution on the scoreboard, watch out on Roses for 2024. Now for the GWS Giants, for my breakout player, I'm going to be choosing none other than Finn Callaghan, the young midfielder. High draft pick not so long ago from GWS. He just continues to put on size. He's a big body type of midfielder, and he's just one that will just, similar to what I said about Soligo earlier, will just continue to really improve the centre bounce numbers and get more a part of that inside midfield group. Averaged 20 disposals pretty much predominantly on the wing last year, so he's one that could heavily break out this year. For an All-Australian Smokey, heavily rate this guy as a small defender, Connor O'Doone. His numbers looked even better than 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐵 in terms of intercept marking and also one-on-one percentage loss. So he was brilliant in the back half for the Giants last year. He will have a big season. I'm very bullish on that. And an under-the-radar player to watch in 2024, going to be going with Jack Buckley. He's one that might not really take his game to the next level, but he's one that just played his role superbly last year alongside Sam Taylor. He was great as a lockdown defender, and I think when they work as a tandem, they play great footy. So Jack Buckley will continue to really be a pivotal player in the Giants' back six. And now for the Hawthorn Footy Club, one of the youngest sides last year, so plenty of options to choose in terms of youngest breakout players. For my breakout option though, got to be going with Josh Weddle, a player that the Hawks really do rate. They traded up to get him, and wow, he had some great moments last year. When he was playing as a lockdown type, he did struggle a bit, but we all know when we watched him play, he's sort of that player that was able to break free, play high up the ground. He had some great performances. So look, he probably won't come out and have an All-Australian caliber season, but just have a pure breakout year and show, hey, this guy's a serious footballer. You betcha, big on Weddle this year. All-Australian Smokey, got to be going with Mitch Lewis. Sort of a risky selection because he's never been able to put together a fully consistent season because he's always been injured here or there. But if he can get his body right, over 60 goals could potentially be on the cards. He has been known to kick a lot of goals, that is safe to say. And an under-the-radar type, Gonna be going with Connor McDonald. He's just a part of that young brigade where, look, he gets plenty of mention, but heading into this year, he's been able to show some great moments on that half-forward line for the Hawks, and there's just plenty of hyped up plays at the moment, like 𝐻𝐻𝐿, like 𝐻𝐻𝐿, and you don't really hear too much really about Connor McDonald, so he's one I think can really improve his output and his numbers. He shows great class and is also able to show some great toughness and work ethic, so Connor McDonald as an under-the-radar type. For the Melbourne Demons now, the breakout player I'm going to be choosing is a pretty obvious one, really. You're looking at their full forward stocks and Jacob van Rooyen, from what he was able to show last year, it is promising signs. Is this guy now their next franchise key forward? Potentially. He came in round 3, debut against the Swans, kicked I think 2 or 3 goals, and he's been able to show some great moments, and he's really a cult figure already with the rude chants you always hear ringing around the MCG, so he's definitely capable of kicking over 30-35 goals this season. All-Australian Smokey, 𝐬𝐿𝐼 𝐴𝐵𝐸𝐿's never made the All-Australian squad before. He kicked 37 goals last year. Just his blend also of toughness at the footy, that's able to run through the middle and get a quick clearance, but also just his evasive skills. Kicking 37 goals last year, can definitely improve on that and push a case for an All-Australian squad spot this year. And then for the under-the-radar type, I'm going to be going with Jake Bowey, a player that I really enjoy watching. Just his mix of composure and foot skills is impressive for the Ds coming out of that back half. He's one that will just continue to play a really important role for the Ds and just continue to chip away, improving his output and his disposal averages year by year. But yeah, just love this guy's composure and his footy IQ. For the North Melbourne Kangaroos, breakout player, got to be going with George Wardlaw. A lot of fans are hyping up this guy again heading into 2024. He didn't have much of a preseason at all. When the Kangaroos drafted this guy, they were aware about his hamstring issues and they wanted to ease this guy in slowly in 2023. Finally had his debut in round 10, and yeah, he was just awesome on his debut. With a full preseason now, I think he'll come in and be a mainstay in that midfield and have a fantastic year for the Kangaroos. And then for an All-Australian Smoky, going to be going with Luke Davies-Uniacke. It's a pretty obvious one, but he's never made the All-Australian squad before. This guy, at his absolute best, looks freakish with just his ability to win clearance and break free from stoppage. Also kicks some lovely goals. His first few games of last year was brilliant, so if he can get his body right and his consistency and his and his focus fully on this season and have a consistent 20 plus games, he's definitely a case to push towards an All-Australian squad spot. And a player under the radar, he was the Clubman of the Year last year. Bailey Scott had some nice games across the wing last year for North Melbourne, and when you look at that young crop, don't really hear too much about Bailey Scott. He just chips away week by week, having quite decent games for North Melbourne. Consistent player, and I think he improves heavily this year for the Kangas. Next team up we've got is Port Adelaide, a side that is blessed with young talent, and for a breakout player for 2024, I'm going to be going with Jason Horne-Francis. It's a pretty vanilla selection, but this is a player that is one of the most heavily talented young players in the competition. What he was able to do last year, I felt was quite promising for the Power. He showed some great quarters and flashes of some great football. He was able to break free from stoppages, kick some lovely goals, and he was able to scratch the surface on the potential of this player. He can become an absolute star. And also, let's remember, he came to Port Adelaide last year with quite a bit of controversy and a lot of hate barreling down his way. And also, he did have an injury-interrupted preseason. So now, his second year at the club, and also, he's looking quite good on the track. I think he can really have a breakout season. For an All-Australian Smoky, I'm going to be going with 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼. This one's quite of a left field decision, but if you look at 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, when he came to Port Adelaide not so long ago from the Swans, look what he was able to do. Become a premier intercept marker of the competition and become an All-Australian. His intercepting abilities, he's been able to show at Geelong, especially last year, has always been really promising. So if he can play a really important 1-2 punch role alongside 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼, I think he can really have a great season and push potentially towards an All-Australian squad spot. And finally, a player under the radar for the Port Adelaide Power for 2024. I've discussed a bit about him this preseason. Miles Bergman. I've always really rated this player as just a competitive small defender that's able to play on those dangerous small forward types, but also rebound really nicely. I think he finished 6th or 7th in Port Adelaide's best and fairest last year, which was very good. Made the 22 or under 22 side, and he's just coming into this year again quite under the radar. So he's a player that could break out this year as well for the Power. And now for the Richmond Tigers, they are a side that's going to get a lot more exposure into that youth this year, you definitely feel. So a few options to go with here, but for my breakout player, I am going to be going with Josh Gibcus. I've been hearing that Noel Bolter is going to be swinging a bit more forward this year, which could give the license for Gibcus to really do his thing. I don't think he played a game last year. He was just absolutely decimated by injury. So he comes this year and shows that why he is a top draft pick from not so long ago. He had a good debut season too. He had some nice intercept numbers in that first year. So I think he can have a breakout season. All-Australian Smokey, not really too many options to go with here. With the criteria, I can go with Tim Taranto, but is it a smoky option? Not really. He's definitely capable of pushing towards an All-Australian spot. So I want to go with someone that has a bit more of the smoky tag. And I'm going to go with Liam Baker. He's just a player that's always been able to show tremendous versatility and courage. And even at his height, he can also heavily influence the game with just his flashiness and ability to read the play and his quick thinking too. So, expect him to roll into the midfield and play half back and half forward. He's also a great chance to be high up there for one of their best and fairest recipients this year. And a player under the radar for the Tigers. Like the sounds of Thompson Dow, I've been hearing in reports that this guy is looking good as that pure inside midfielder. So expect this guy to potentially play over 15, 16 games for the Tigers and become a main part of that Richmond midfield in 2024. Now for the Saints, for their breakout play for 2024, I'm actually going to be going with two here because these two players I really think can have a big season. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐼 𝐿𝐼 and also Mitch Owens. These are just two players I absolutely love watching, especially 𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐼. His season last year, especially second half of the year, was very good for St Kilda, and just how he roams from half back, his foot skills, his decision making is just a treat to watch, and he's one to really improve his numbers and show more consistency this year. And Mitch Owens just has to be a breakout type. He's definitely one that could push towards an All-Australian spot, even though it might be a little bit early in his career. But we all know a player that's very good at ground level, also very athletic too in the air, strong player, great core strength, a goal kicker, versatile. He's just one that I think can just take a massive step in 2024. Then for an All-Australian Smoky, going to be going with Max King. If he's able to have a fully fit season, get his body right, definitely capable of kicking over 60 goals, because as soon as he came in for the Saints last year, he had some great games. So him for an All-Australian Smoky. And then finally, an under-the-radar player, I'm going to be going with 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐼 𝐻𝐿𝐼. If you've seen some photos across the preseason, you probably saw that, geez, this guy has an absolute rig. And, he played a little bit of half-back last year for Ross Lyon, improving that accountability, had some nice games there. So him now heading more into the midfield is definitely a possibility in 2024, and a player that I'm keen to watch because he's just been able to show some nice ball-winning ability across his time so far for the Saints. So he's one to really watch for the Saints in 2024, 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐼. And now for the Sydney Swans, for my breakout players, again, I'm going to be going with two here because I see that forward 50 as a bit more of a collective effort from these two players, Logan McDonald and Hayden McLean. What I mean by that is I don't necessarily think Logan McDonald will come out, as everyone's thinking, and kick 50 plus goals this season, because I also love the look of Hayden McLean as that underrated player that really heavily contributes, as well as you can probably also include Amadi here, but I think personally McDonald and McLean are going to be the future of that Swans forward line, and for me will really improve their production this year. So watch out for McDonald with his leading ability, and McLean as well. In the air, he was fantastic last year for Sydney, so he's one to take the big step as well. Very good goal kicker as well. For an All-Australian Smoky, can't go Nick Blakey because he made the All-Australian squad last year. Still think he is a Smoky in a way. So if we're picking a player who's never made the All-Australian squad before, I'm going with Tom McCartan. His last 5 weeks of the season last year, he was, play ratings wise, the best key back in the comp. He had a great Elam final too. He locked down 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼 𝐸𝐿𝐼 superbly. So he's had a few injury and concussion issues, especially last year. So if he can get his body right and show some really good intercepting and lockdown and one-on-one numbers, he's definitely a Smoky for an All-Australian spot. I think he's 25 at the end of this year too. And finally, for a player under the radar, might not seem like it because he's a high draft pick, but at the moment, don't really hear much noise about Braden Campbell because we're always excited about Errol Gould and Chad Warner, James Rowbottom, those sort of types don't really hear much about Campbell. So I personally think he's sort of under the radar, especially with how he plays, because he might not get the highest amount of numbers, but he was able to push a bit more higher onto the wing last year for the Swans, and he had some great moments because his kicking forward of centre is brilliant. He's got a big left boot, so I think he improves his production and also just heavily improves his numbers this year for the Swans. So watch out on this guy on a wing this year. I think he can heavily improve for the Swans this year, Braden Campbell. Now for the West Coast Eagles, the breakout player I'm going to be going with is none other than the inside midfielder of Ruben Ghimbi. Started off the season very well in his debut year last season. His ability to win the footy in and under, and also just his tough approach at the pill, racking up those tackles, was impressive to watch. So I think he can really improve his ability to accumulate a lot more of his own footy this year for the Eagles. And now for an All-Australian smoky, I'm going to have to break my own rule book here and go with Oscar Allen, because when you look at players that have never made an All-Australian squad, there's basically no one to choose from. The only really closest option would be Liam Duggan, but that's just still seems like a bit more of an obscure prediction to go. So Oscar Allen it is, and he still is really a smoky All-Australian option because he's playing in quite a bad side at the moment, but he is able to boot home the goals. He kicked over 50 goals last year. I'm pretty sure he kicked a goal in every game almost. So yeah, he's just one to potentially kick over 60 goals for the Eagles this year. And finally, a player under the radar, a young player I really like the look of, is Brady Hough. He's been able to show some nice moments as a sort of small defender type that's able to play on those dangerous small forwards, but also on those tall forwards. He's looked composed, had some nice moments one-on-one, and I think he can just continue to contribute nicely to that Eagles back six. And yeah, a breakout season for him could really be on the cards as well. And for the final club of this video today, the Western Bulldogs, for my breakout player, I'm going to be going with Sam Darcy, the 208-centimetre giant. He's just been decimated by injury the past 2 years or so now, but when he has been able to play as that key defensive player in the Bulldogs' back six, he has been able to show some nice glimpses as a tall intercepting type. So he comes in this year and plays a lot more games and yeah, really improves his numbers. Then for an All-Australian smoky, I'm going to be going with Ed Richards, one of the Bulldogs' most underrated players, I think. He really is just a classy player across halfback for the Bulldogs. A great left boot, but is also able to intercept really nicely. I think he averaged around 22 touches last year. So with the classy player he is, he could really come out and have a breakout season and push towards an All-Australian selection. And finally, for the under-the-radar player, I'm going to be going with Nick Coffield, the new recruit for the Western Bulldogs. I mean, his 2020 season for St Kilda was very promising as that intercepting defender type. And from that point onwards until now, a player that has just been decimated by injury. He's coming across into a new environment, a new team that just desperately needs more intercepting defenders, and Coffield definitely ticks that. So hey, he's a player definitely to watch in 2024 for the Doggies, Nick Coffield. So ladies and gentlemen, there is my 2 cents on some breakout candidates for every AFL club. Again, me adding in these categories just gave me more of an opportunity to discuss some more players to choose from, because it's hard to just go with just one solitary player from every AFL club, because there's just so much to discuss in terms of breakout players for the 2024 AFL season or for an upcoming season. So make sure to comment down below and let me know what you did think of the players I did discuss. Would you also add in a few other players that I didn't talk about in this video today? Feel free to let me know down below in the comments. Love to hear your people's opinions. And yeah, really keen for the season to start. Very, very close. Going to get the predictions and also the creators' predictions out very soon. So stay tuned on the channel. And apart from that, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.